Ruling party will hold its national elective conference, but in the lead up to the event, the provincial conferences have been marred with factional disputes, court interdicts and allegations of bogus delegates and criminality. For more on this, I'm joined by political analyst Ntsikelelo Breakfast. Very good evening to you. Thank you so much for your time. I mean, just looking and summing up the tone that has been set across the conferences, what does the National Elective Conference now speak to when it comes to the lessons that perhaps may have been learnt with the conferences across the provinces?
Thank you very much, Mpho, for having me. I think the ANC has identified some gaps, and at the moment it is trying its level best to bridge those gaps. For instance, I think yesterday at that press conference, what stood out for me was the political appreciation surrounding the issue of transformation, that the ANC has fallen short, for instance, with regard to the inclusion of women on matters of leadership. I mean, let's face it, every time a PC is elected, there's only one woman that is elected, and that has been made the political culture of the ANC. On the other hand, the ANC says that it pursues the NDR, it fights against all forms of oppression, but it omits to include women. And when I'm talking about transformation, I'm talking about to alter the social order by promoting inclusion. So women have been omitted in many structures of leadership, young people as well. More often than not, members of the LGBTQI, and also maybe people with disabilities. So I'm over the moon that the ANC has taken that into account. The other issue that stood out for me was the issue of party discipline, because of late the ANC has fallen short in terms of recruiting the cream of the crop with regard to the quality of membership. So I'm glad that the ANC has developed ways and means of bridging those gaps, but I guess the proof of the pudding is in the eating.
Yeah, absolutely. ANC Electoral Committee Chair Kgalema Motlanthe mentioning that the caliber of that 80-member structure, speaking about the NEC, is one that will essentially, determine the success of the ruling party. What kind of individuals will be looked at in that structure? Because Motlanthe was saying that only the best should be elected there and should be considered.
Well, in theory, the ANC does have what is called through the eye of the needle, that you must be fit and proper, tried and tested. But sometimes that is a theorization. I mean, the ANC has tried to renew itself also by the step-aside principle that was upheld, by and large by the majority of its members in the previous policy conference, so that it can come across to be a party that has some kind of integrity. So there are guidelines in theory, but the problem is in practice. How do you enforce them? I mean, even with the step-aside principle, there are different understandings and interpretations. The other day, one member of the NEC said that there are gaps with regard to the step-aside principle. I think it was Paul Mashatile in Mpumalanga. So in this province, you find the person who's accused of this and that being elected. In another province, it's a different ball game. So they need to be consistent in terms of how they implement these policies if they want their members to take them seriously.
I suppose, as you speak about the step-aside principle, Kgalema Motlanthe may have dashed or sank the hopes of some, like suspended ANC Secretary General Ace Magashule for political comeback in December. I mean, he'd earlier mentioned all sorts of reasons why he thinks that he's being prevented from contesting. What do you make of that?
Well, I'm not taken aback by that. I've said this before, and I will say it again, that the step-aside principle was going to be under the spotlight at the policy conference. And it was, but then, unfortunately, the Radical Economic Transformation faction, they lost the debate. And there is no way now they can try to reinvent the wheel by bringing back the matter through the back door. Unfortunately, they have to abide by the popular view of the previous I don't know, unless maybe there is a major shake-up, which is a mission impossible at the moment. But also the fact that, in my view, they lost that debate, which is a very critical debate, signifies that the other faction that they are competing with has an upper hand, unless something happens between now and the time when the upcoming conference of the ANC is held.
Very well. Thank you so much for that analysis. Let's leave it there for now, and thank you for your time, political analyst Ntsikelelo Breakfast. You may